Every year, waterfalls kill dozens of tourists who ignore warning signs and underestimate nature's power. A single misstep near these cascades can send you plummeting hundreds of feet or trap you in currents strong enough to pin a car underwater. Here are 10 waterfalls where one wrong move turns your vacation into a tragedy. Location 1. Angel Falls, Venezuela. Angel Falls drops 3,212 feet from the top of Ollantaytambo Mountain, making it the world's tallest uninterrupted waterfall. The journey to reach it requires a flight to Cannonball National Park, followed by a river trip that can take up to 4 hours depending on water levels. Most deaths here don't happen at the falls themselves, but during the treacherous approach through dense jungle and unpredictable rivers. The area surrounding Angel Falls sits in one of the most remote regions of Venezuela, where rescue operations can take days to organize. Tourists have drowned in the Chirun River during the boat approach when vessels capsized in rapids. The hiking trails to viewing points become extremely slippery during rainy season, and several visitors have fallen from observation areas while trying to get closer to the edge for photos. Venezuelan authorities stopped maintaining proper safety barriers years ago due to political and economic instability in the country. Local Pemon guides warn tourists about the risks, but language barriers and tourists ignoring advice have led to multiple fatalities. The combination of isolation, lack of medical facilities, and challenging terrain means even minor injuries can become life-threatening before help arrives. Location 2. Victoria Falls, Zambia, Zimbabwe. Victoria Falls stretches over a mile wide and plunges 355 feet into the Zambezi River Gorge below. The falls create a constant mist that rises hundreds of feet into the air, earning it the local name Mosi Oa Tunya, or the smoke that thunders. During peak flow between February and May, over 500 million liters of water pour over the edge every minute, creating conditions that have killed multiple tourists. Devil's Pool sits at the edge of Victoria Falls on the Zambian side, where a natural rock barrier allows swimmers to float right up to the precipice during low water season. Tour operators take groups to this pool between September and December when water levels drop enough to make it accessible. At least one tourist has been swept over the falls from Devil's Pool, and several others have suffered serious injuries from being slammed against rocks by sudden surges. The rocks around Victoria Falls stay perpetually wet from the mist, making every surface slick and treacherous. Tourists have fallen to their deaths while climbing on rocks for better photo angles or attempting to get closer to the edge than designated viewing areas allow. The force of the water creates unpredictable currents in the pools and channels near the falls, and rescue teams cannot reach anyone who gets pulled into the main flow. Location 3. Gullfoss, Iceland. Gullfoss crashes down in 2 stages with a total drop of 105 feet into a narrow canyon that turns sharply, hiding the bottom stage from view at certain angles. The Vita River that feeds the falls comes from glacial meltwater, keeping the water temperature just above freezing year-round. This waterfall nearly became a hydroelectric dam in the early 1920s, but it now attracts over 1 million visitors annually who underestimate how dangerous it actually is. The pathway to the falls turns into a sheet of ice during winter months, and the mist from the waterfall freezes on contact with any surface it touches. Multiple tourists have slipped on the ice-covered walkways and fallen into the gorge, with the freezing water causing death within minutes, even for strong swimmers. The viewing platforms get coated in a layer of ice so thick that it becomes nearly impossible to maintain footing without proper footwear with spikes. Wind gusts at Gullfoss can reach 60 miles per hour, and these winds have literally blown tourists off their feet and into the water. The canyon walls are steep and slippery, making it impossible to climb out if someone falls in. Icelandic rescue teams have recovered bodies from the gorge that weren't found for days because the mist and spray make visibility almost zero during bad weather. Location 4. Yosemite Falls, California, USA. Yosemite Falls drops a total of 2,425 feet in 3 sections, making it the tallest waterfall in North America and the 5th tallest in the world. The falls run heaviest during spring snowmelt from April through June, when the volume of water creates dangerous conditions throughout the entire area. At least 15 people have died at Yosemite Falls, with most deaths occurring when tourists venture off designated trails or climb on wet rocks near the water. The top of Yosemite Falls can be reached by a strenuous 7.2-mile round-trip hike that gains 2,700 feet in elevation. Hikers have been swept over the edge while trying to cool off in the creek above the falls, not realizing that the current near the lip is far stronger than it appears. The rocks at the top are polished smooth by centuries of water flow, offering almost no traction even when dry. Several victims were wading in shallow water just 20 or 30 feet from the edge when they lost their footing. Park rangers have installed warning signs and fencing, but tourists regularly climb around barriers to get closer to the edge or into the water. The base of the falls creates such powerful wind from the force of falling water that it can knock people over. During peak flow, the mist at the bottom reduces visibility to just a few feet, and the wet rocks around the base have caused numerous slip and fall deaths over the years. Location 5, Niagara Falls, USA, Canada. Niagara Falls consists of 3 waterfalls with a combined drop of 167 feet and a flow rate that can exceed 750,000 gallons per second. The Horseshoe Falls on the Canadian side accounts for 90% of the water flow and creates a current so powerful that anything pulled into it gets trapped in a recirculating current at the bottom. Over 5,000 bodies have been recovered from Niagara Falls since the 1800s. Though many of these were intentional jumps rather than accidents, the rocks and railings around Niagara Falls become coated in ice during winter, creating conditions where dozens of tourists slip and fall each year. Several people have climbed over safety barriers for photos and lost their balance, falling into the rapids above the falls, where the current makes rescue impossible. The water moves at 25 miles per hour as it approaches the edge, and anyone who enters the water more than 500 feet upstream will almost certainly go over. In 2011, a Japanese tourist climbed over a railing at the brink of the Horseshoe Falls, slipped on wet rocks, and was swept to her death in front of her family. The Niagara Parks Police and Emergency Services patrol constantly, but they recover multiple bodies every year. The falls operate 24 hours a day with no slowdown in water flow, and the combination of powerful currents, freezing water temperatures, and the massive drop makes survival extremely unlikely for anyone who goes over. Location 6, Kaieteur Falls, Guyana. Kaieteur Falls plunges 741 feet in a single drop, making it one of the most powerful waterfalls in the world by volume of water. The falls sit deep in the Amazon rainforest of Guyana, accessible only by small aircraft or a grueling multi-day trek through jungle. The observation deck sits just 30 feet from the edge, with only a basic wooden railing separating visitors from the drop, and the wood deteriorates rapidly in the humid jungle environment. The rock at the edge of Kaieteur Falls constantly crumbles away due to erosion, and large chunks regularly break off without warning. In 2010, a Chinese tourist died after climbing over the railing and slipping on moss-covered rocks while posing for photos. The viewing platform itself has no secondary barriers, and the wet conditions mean the wooden boards become incredibly slippery within minutes of rain. Medical evacuation from Kaieteur Falls requires a helicopter flight that can take hours to arrange, and there are no medical facilities within 100 miles of the falls. The jungle surrounding the falls contains venomous snakes, jaguars, and other dangerous wildlife that make wandering off paths extremely risky. Tour groups are small and supervision is minimal, leaving tourists free to make deadly decisions with no one to stop them until it's too late. Location 7, Dettifoss, Iceland. Dettifoss is Europe's most powerful waterfall, with 193 cubic meters of water crashing over its 144-foot drop every single second. The falls sit in a remote area of northeast Iceland, where the nearest hospital is over 2 hours away by car. The surrounding landscape consists of sharp volcanic rock that cuts through clothing and skin, and the constant spray from the falls makes every surface treacherous. The eastern viewing area of Dettifoss has no barriers or fencing, allowing tourists to walk right up to the edge of the canyon. Multiple people have slipped on the wet rocks and fallen to their deaths, with their bodies sometimes taking days to recover due to the difficult terrain. The western side has a paved path, but tourists regularly leave the designated trail to get closer, not understanding that the volcanic rock crumbles unexpectedly under weight. The glacial water feeding Dettifoss stays at near-freezing temperatures year-round, and the immense power of the falls creates currents that would instantly pull anyone who fell in downstream. The spray from Dettifoss can soak visitors within seconds, and hypothermia becomes a real risk when combined with Iceland's harsh weather. Wind conditions change rapidly in this area, and sudden gusts have knocked tourists off balance near the edge with fatal results. Location 8. Iguazu Falls, Argentina, Brazil. Iguazu Falls consists of 275 individual waterfalls spread across nearly 2 miles, with the Devil's Throat section dropping 269 feet in a massive U-shaped chasm. The falls straddle the border between Argentina and Brazil, with walkways and platforms allowing tourists to get remarkably close to the falling water. The volume of water flowing over Iguazu reaches 450,000 cubic feet per second during peak flow, creating conditions where rescue becomes impossible. The metal walkways at Iguazu become extremely slippery from constant mist and spray, and tourists have fallen through gaps in the railings or been knocked off balance by the force of wind and water. The Devil's Throat viewing platform extends over the edge of the main falls, suspended by supports that shake and vibrate from the water's force. Several tourists have panicked on this platform and attempted to run back, slipping and falling in the process. The river above Iguazu Falls contains strong currents that have swept swimmers to their deaths despite warning signs and barriers. Coatis and other wildlife in the park have bitten tourists who tried to feed or photograph them, causing injuries that became infected in the humid tropical environment. The falls create their own weather system with sudden rainstorms, and flash flooding in the area has trapped visitors on islands and platforms surrounded by rising water with no escape route. Location 9. Havasu Falls, Arizona, USA. Havasu Falls drops 100 feet into a turquoise pool on the Havasupai Indian Reservation in the Grand Canyon. The trail to reach the falls requires a 10-mile hike through desert terrain, with temperatures that regularly exceed 110 degrees Fahrenheit in summer. The contrast between the scorching desert heat and the cold spring water has caused several tourists to go into shock and drown after jumping in too quickly. The pool beneath Havasu Falls looks inviting, but contains underwater rocks and currents that have killed multiple swimmers. The Havasupai tribe limits permits to 300 people per day, but even with restricted access, several drownings and serious injuries occur each year. Cliff jumping is technically prohibited but widely practiced, and tourists have hit hidden rocks or misjudged the depth, suffering broken necks and spinal injuries in water, far from any medical help. Flash floods in the area have killed multiple people, with the most recent major flood in 2008 forcing evacuation of the entire campground and causing extensive damage. The canyon walls funnel water from storms miles away, and water levels can rise 10 feet in minutes with no warning. The only way out of the area is the 10-mile hike back up, and anyone injured at the falls must be carried out on horseback or by helicopter if weather permits evacuation. Location 10. Nohkalikai Falls, India. Nohkalikai Falls plunges 1,115 feet down a sheer cliff face in Meghalaya, India, making it the tallest plunge waterfall in the country. The region receives over 450 inches of rain annually, making it one of the wettest places on Earth. During monsoon season from June to September, the volume of water turns Nohkalikai into a thundering cascade that generates mist visible for miles. while the dry season reduces it to barely a trickle. The viewing platform for Nohkalikai Falls sits on the edge of a cliff, with only basic metal railings that have rusted through in several places. Tourists have climbed over these barriers to get closer to the edge and fallen to their deaths on the rocks nearly 1,000 feet below. The constant moisture makes the ground perpetually muddy and unstable, and small landslides regularly occur around the viewing area during heavy rains. The pool at the base of Nohkalikai Falls looks deceptively calm, but has claimed multiple lives from tourists who attempted to swim there. The approach to the base requires scrambling down steep, slippery paths with no safety equipment or barriers. Local legends say the falls are cursed, named after a woman who jumped to her death from the top, and several suicide jumps have occurred here over the years, with recovery of bodies often taking weeks due to the remote location and difficult terrain. These 10 waterfalls prove that natural beauty comes with deadly risks that kill even experienced travelers. The combination of slippery rocks, powerful currents, and human overconfidence turns these destinations into death traps. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more beyond belief facts, click on the video appearing on your screen now and remember to hit the subscribe button.